Hi there, welcome to class everyone. I'm Miss Faust. Please make sure you have paper out and a pen or pencil. You will need to take notes today. And I do mean, please take notes. You never know, they may come in handy down the road. Okay? Yes, we are going to start with our next readings. Yes, you heard me correctly. Readings. We have 2 poems that we're going to read. Now, this is it. Our very last readings. And our very last essay is coming up. Okay, so we're getting ready for that last essay. You've got it. And as usual, next class period will be the highlights of our readings from today. Okay, so make sure you read the materials and that you're ready to take some notes next class period over the readings. Fantastic. You have your paper? Good. So let us begin. Let's come on over to the board. We're going to do this a little bit differently. Okay. If you look at the board here, we have at the top here, Confessional Poetry / Poets. Yes, I am going to talk to you about a type of poetry. It is called confessional poetry. Okay. It just in the word confessional, it gives you a clue to the kind of poetry that these poets, I'm talking these in general, not our poets, but in general, that these poets would write. Now, let me get my notes so I can share the highlights of this movement, confessional poetry. And of course, those who write in this method are your confessional poets. And yes, you're right. Our poets for today are confessional poets. So what is confessional poetry all about? Okay, so here we go. Are you taking notes? You are? Fantastic. So when we talk about confessional poetry, we are talking about, how do I want to say this? It's a poetry that comes in the form of I. Yes, I. Capital I, as in I. It's all about me. Okay? It's the personal. So this type of poetry is the personal, coming in the form of I. Now, confessional poetry came about, we could say, the late 1950s. It went into the early 1960s. Okay, so that's the time period for confessional poetry. Everyone got that? We're talking about the personal, we're talking about the I, we're talking about late 1950s, early 1960s, okay? And the confessional poets range from our poets here, Sylvia Plath and Sexton, to someone such as Robert Lowell, Lowell, Robert Lowell, who actually was especially Plath's teacher. So she learned her writing, how to write in the confessional method from him. Okay? All right. So let's see. That's right. They were actually both students, especially with Plath. Okay. So you're dealing with subject matter such as, for instance, it's private experiences and feelings about death, okay, about relationships, about depression, things of that nature. Subject matter that was not shared in American poetry till confessional poetry came about, especially through Robert Lowell, okay? Robert Lowell, a key figure in this movement. Someone such as Plath, yes, would talk about relationships, depression, and the like, but may also talk about something more personal that women deal with, such as pregnancy and the effects of pregnancy, such as morning sickness and so on and so on. So yes, again, we're talking subject matter that in American poetry, no. I mean, Where would you find someone writing about pregnancy? Well, come the late 50s, early 1960s, and guess what? You now find that in American poetry. Okay. And when they talk about death, they're dealing with death as in very personal. Someone amongst their circle, quite often a family member. They're not talking about death as in wartime, which was discussed before confessional poetry came about. Okay. Now, they tend to share their emotions. Obviously, poetry is all about emotions, so they do that. But the one thing that people like to, I don't want to say like to forget, but tend to forget, it's not a matter of liking to or anything, they tend to forget, is that even though they're sharing their thoughts through emotions and the like, people forget that these poets still look to see how they write their poem, what form it comes in. We call that their craft. They do focus on craft, not just subject matter. Does everyone understand that? It's the format. Does it come in free verse, perhaps? Does it come in sonnet form? Does it come in couplets? Okay, so they do look at that. They do put, excuse me, so sorry. They do put attention into the words that they use. In other words, their diction. D-I-C-T-I-O-N. Okay. So, confessional poets, you might say, well, they had no influence, but actually they did. They have influenced poets that are out and about now, okay, that might be older, okay. So they have had influence on, the future poets, the ones that came after them, after Lowell, Plath, Sexton, okay. So they do have an influence on generations that are coming. Okay. Do you have any questions about confessional poetry? Okay. If you do, please let me know and I'll help you out with it. Okay. So let's now focus on our poets. Woo. I do hope you're taking notes. We'll start with Sylvia Plath. You can see her dates, 1932 to 1963. Yes, she didn't live very long. She only lived 30 years. Okay. She is, as I said, a confessional poet. She's also a novelist. She wrote one novel. It's called A Bell Jar. It's sort of autobiographical, but fictionalized. Okay, the character, you could say, the main character is based off of her, but it's more fiction. So some people think, it can't be true, but yeah, critics, scholars have discovered, they link it to her own life, to Plath's own life, and the like. So okay, and she was also a college instructor, actually at the college where she graduated from, which was Smith College, which is actually in the East. It's actually a college for women. Okay, so she is from there. Her poetry tends to be autobiographical. Okay, she's considered to be one of the most dynamic and admired poets of the 20th century. What impacted her life is the death of her father when she was 8 years old. Her father passed away. He was he was a college professor, and he actually met her mom. She was taking a class from him, so that's how they met. And they're of German descent. Her parents and the like. So yes, her father was an influence. She did not exactly have a very happy relationship with him, but she did some of the things that he liked, such as bees. He had a thing about bees. Plus, he taught courses on bees. That passion passed on to her. She writes poems about bees. Yeah, that's great. Okay, and yes, and then he died at 8, and she has a poem called Daddy that she's really famous for, and it's it's the result of her dad and his death and the like, and she shares how their relationship was sort of on off, a little love and not so good, okay, a little okay, back and forth type relationship. It was not the greatest. He was a very harsh, stern father. Okay, and she did have a brother. Her mother was an influence too. She didn't seem to have much of a relationship with her mother either. It was more like grandparents. Luckily, they lived with them. So she had more of a relationship with the grandparents than with her own parents. Yeah. And as she got older, her mother, their relationships just sort of fizzled and, and like. Okay. As I said, a lot of her poetry is autobiographical, more or less. Okay. She talks about her anguish, her mental anguish. Confessional poetry coming into play. She talks about her troubled marriage. She was married to a poet who was a poet laureate, Ted Hughes. Okay. From England. She was married to him. They had 2 children. Their marriage was not a very good one. Toward the end of her life, they were basically separated. I don't remember now. I'm so sorry. I don't think they were truly divorced, but they weren't together anymore. He lived one area, and she died in England, but she was born here in the United States, back east. He lived elsewhere. Their marriage basically fell apart because he had fallen in love with another woman who actually happened to be a poet too, and she happened to have a daughter. And yes, and basically Plath was left to take care of their kids, and she was, even though she was writing a lot of poetry and she had written that book, okay, she was not well off. She struggled very hard. It was toward the end of her life. Scholars say that she just, the output was magnificent. It was just one great poem after another. And yeah. She did suffer from depression. Again, you can see why she's a confessional poet. And Beljar will talk a lot about that. So she did go through depression, especially during her college years, in her 20s and the like. And let's see, she also, her marriage. She does talk about her unresolved conflicts with her parents, and then about her own vision of herself. She even talks about her experiences when she got married, where she traveled with her husband, Ted Hughes, their honeymoon and the different places, and about bees and all wonderful things like that. Let's see. So that gives you a little something about Sylvia Plath. And as you can see, she was very young. As I said, she was 30 years old. And when she passed away, which was in England, she committed suicide. So it was, and again, the depression. She had tried at 19 when she was going to college, but her brother saved her. Okay. I'm trying to find, let's see here. I was trying to find something else. Yes. Yes, he did. Let's see, he did save her that time. I'm so sorry, I have a frog to this weird day. And her husband was responsible for putting her work out after her death and everything. And scholars do say that things were missing. So sorry, things were missing, probably things that did not make him look very good. So yes, interesting poet, indeed. Any questions? Let me know. Let's go on to Anne Sexton. As you can see, Anne Sexton did not live very long either. She actually lived 45 years. Another confessional poet. Let's go through some things because I want to hit the highlights of these poets. Okay, she is a poet, a confessional poet, and that's basically what she's known for, is her poetry. And she did not have a very good relationship with her parents and the like. She suffered from depression. She got married at 19. She had 2 children after the second child. After the birth of her first daughter, she suffered a breakdown. She suffered from postpartum depression, and she ended up having a therapist who recommended that, because she had a passion for writing poetry in school, he recommended that she write down her thoughts, her feelings. And she did that, and she kept doing it, and her therapist thought, oh, that is a great thing to do, just keep doing it. And yes, her thoughts turned into poems. Scholars said a lot of it is, it's about her life. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, encouraged her therapist encouraged her to write. She joined writing groups. She even met Sylvia Plath. Again, she was a student of Robert Lowell, Confessional Poet. Let's see. She explored relationships between people. In other words, sort of like an archetypal, what we expect of a mother-daughter relationship, okay? Sort of mythical, okay? Among mothers and daughters, fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, gods and humans, men and women, okay? She talked about the paradox between, that's rooted in human behavior and motivation, how we do this, but then we end up doing that, and we think this, and it's just a paradox of how we think. Okay, that's what she dealt with in her work. So she is known for her poetry, and of course, a lot of her poetry was put in books, just like Sylvia Plath. Unlike Sylvia, she doesn't have a novel herself, as far as if I remember correctly. She may have. Yeah, she had poetry books. Okay, she did write a play. She won for one of her poetry books. She won the Pulitzer Prize. Okay, which Sylvia Plath actually was awarded after her death. She was awarded a Pulitzer after her death. Okay, so yes, her poetry. So she was very popular. She's considered one of the most popular of the poets of mid-20th century America. And let's see. One critic said, loved her work, said that she wrote the kind of poems that really said something, but if somebody else had written it, the poems wouldn't have been worth anything. So she was a fantastic writer. She writes a poem which no one else could have written. She was so great. And like Sylvia Plath, she too committed suicide. Again, depression. So we have some commonalities here between these two poets. But they're both fantastic writers. Okay. If you have any questions, please let me know. So let's move on. I would like you to read Plath's Mirror and Sexton's Courage. So please make sure that you're getting Sylvia Plath. So Google Sylvia Plath or Sylvia Plath's Mirror and Sexton's Anne Sexton Courage, however you want to do it. Anne Sexton's Courage. Please make sure you're Googling the correct readings. Plath's Mirror, Sexton's Courage. This is your assignment for today. You're to read the two poems, Mirror and Courage. They're not long. Courage is a bit longer. Her Plath's Mirror is a short one. Courage is over a page, but when I think about it, it has so much to say about life. It's fantastic. I need you to copy and answer the following. Who is the speaker of Plath's poem? It's actually really easy. Remember, the speaker is the one who tells the what's going on. Okay, the equivalent is narrator in the story book. Okay. What are the stages in life represented in Sexton's poem? Remember, we all go through stages in life. What are the stages in life dealt with in Sexton's Courage? Okay, so make sure to copy down both of these and to answer them. Please don't just write down, let's say, dog for number one, if that was the speaker. I'm just saying. No, I need to see the entire question. And then finally, here's your daily question. Is there an app you hate, but you still use it anyway? So is there an app you really don't like, but you find yourself using it no matter what? You just can't get away from it. Okay, so this is it for today. Again, make sure you have notes. Confessional Poetry / Poets on Plath and Sexton. Right. If you weren't able to catch everything because you're going, oh my gosh, Miss Faust, slow down. Slow down. Oh, there goes the clock. That's not great. That's fine. We'll give it a second. There you go. That is fine. Put a pause to the video, and guess what? You can write down what I'm saying. Okay? Okay? So, again, this is due today. Next time, as I said at the beginning of today's class session, I will hit the highlights, the high points, and then, yes, assign your very last essay. I know you're looking forward to that. Okay? Again, due today. I hope you have a great day. Till next time. Bye-bye.